Hey, what's up, everybody? We think we're live. If you can hear us in the chat, let us know. What's up, Reg? How's everything going, man?
I don't complain anymore. It's
Because nobody cares. Or...
nobody's listening, nobody cares. But my things have been pretty awesome. Happy, healthy, business is good. So, how about yourself?
Fantastic. Coming off a series of vacations, getting ready to take another one. Thanks, Eric, for confirming. Appreciate it. Coming off another one or planning another one, but I'm going to be in Nashville in a few weeks, which is always fun.
Good
It's
town.
work, but it's fun. It's a fun place. Have you been enjoying the sessions up to now, the last couple days?
I've actually missed most. I'm presenting at a few conferences this week. So October is like the busiest time of year for us, just nonstop conferences and stuff like that. So, unfortunately, I've either been working or presenting for
Oh, it's not a bad
since
thing.
October
Educating the
1st.
masses.
Yeah, yeah.
I hate to admit it. I told Amanda the same thing. I was like, I had some personal stuff come up the first 2 days. So as of like 8 o'clock this morning, I was rewatching all the crowdcast streams, which is actually pretty cool. I like that that's there. But for those two people that don't know who you are, you want to introduce yourself, give some background on you?
Sure. I would guess there's more than two, but um, I think the only reason really I'm here is my background is really sort of a nexus of MSP life and cybersecurity headaches. So back in 2001, I was one of the co-founders at Autotask, and I was the CTO there for about a decade. And so I got to spend a whole bunch of time watching managed services be born and then watching the ensuing struggles to migrate to this brand new, awesome business model, which, in my opinion, if you've seen any of my other stuff, has really become an antique. And then I built a very large cybersecurity, enterprise cybersecurity consulting firm around 2010. And then Orbital Fire, my latest venture, which focuses exclusively on making cybersecurity accessible to small businesses, is now we're going on 5 years old. So,
Okay. And I'm Ray Orsini, CEO and founder of OIT VoIP, MSP Media Network also, where we do a bunch of shows for the tech community. And I was an MSP. Also, like you, I was talking with Matt Topper the other day because one of our shows, MSP Community Live, where we talk about all the topics in the MSP community, and we realized we both refer to ourselves as ex MSPs, but I was an MSP in 2016, so it's been a minute, rounding out a decade almost of not being an MSP, but I still feel it in my heart, though. Um,
yeah.
you know, so going through these sessions, I was looking at the first one. The whole point of here is you and I go to sessions a lot. You and I present at sessions a lot, and the best sessions, in my opinion, are the ones that give you actionables on the way out. There's something you're going to take home and actually do. Um, has that been your experience too? What are the best sessions that get you excited?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, the actionable stuff, but also just making it relevant to me,
Mm-hmm.
understanding my problems and what I'm trying to get out of it. I think it's become cool to have great headlines and titles for presentations. But if you're kind of not meeting the expectations of the abstract, it can be frustrating at times.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Um, so, and we've both seen sometimes sessions are a little salesy, more salesy than educational. Present company excluded, of course. Having been on some sessions with you, and you always do your best to actually educate people, which is always appreciated. More conversationally. So, with that said, I have no intention of doing any PowerPoint sharing. We meant to do this kind of like a fireside chat, as Matt Lee likes to call it. And with that, I want to go through some of the sessions. I'd like to hear from the chat also, but go through some of the sessions and just weigh in a little bit and talk about what actionables should come out. Um, Starting off on day one, very first session, Matt Lee and Matt Lee and Connor Swam talking about community and getting their start in the community. Reg, I've seen you in a ton of communities. Um, what's your ideal engagement there? What are you trying to get out of joining those communities when you do so?
Well, I'll start with uh, really, so back 5 years ago, when the idea of doing small business cybersecurity came up, and admittedly, it wasn't my idea, and I thought it was a terrible idea at first. I think I made some big mistakes in the community because having been around MSPs, managed services, IT providers for a long time, I kind of came out not realizing or thinking about how much the industry had changed in 10 years. And so we made some huge mistakes. And I think one of the things that we didn't do well was really engage the community. So as we come out with this solution and we feel like we've dealt with a lot of these serious problems that we see, we didn't really validate that with the right people. And I think for us, community, we learned that lesson the hard way. But I think since then, we've done a much better job and really recognized the value of getting out in front of people and saying, hey, listen, this is what we're thinking. What, can you help us pick this thing apart? And so, learn that lesson the hard way, that community can be a huge asset for solving problems. And we probably didn't do a great job of it in the beginning.
That's I often say when I started my MSP, I've been in IT since the early 90s, but when I started this last MSP, it was 2011. And I would tell people all the time, like, I didn't know Reddit was a thing. I didn't know MSP Geek, and MSP Geek was founded almost the same time as my MSP. But I wasn't aware of those resources. So a lot of the things, especially, in your time coming up, you kind of figure your stuff out and you build your network of colleagues. But there's a big difference between the 4 or 5 people you work with on a regular basis, maybe other business owners kind of thing, versus our industry contacts versus Reddit, right? That's 189,000 people in the RMSP community. MSP Geek is 15 or 20,000, I think. Tech Tribe, plenty of other communities. And one of the things I learned from there was really simple. I'm not the only one going through this. So as an MSP, it made a huge difference. So that's the actionable I'm going to put out to the audience now. Hopefully you heard Matt Lee's story about he just started as director of technology and he didn't feel empowered to actually put his foot down in the things that need to be done. And being at a conference, hearing from another MSP, very much like the the Robert Chaffee story. But hearing that and realizing it gave, Matt called it, empowered him to go out to his company and say, hey guys, we need to do this. This is not optional anymore. We need to double down on security. So that kind of thing, that kind of takeaway is phenomenal. I've had the same instances where I'll talk to a community, realize they're handling something that'll give me the ammunition to go do what I need to do. So go join a community. I don't care what community, join one. MSP Geek has Discord and forums. Tech Tribe has forums. Reddit obviously has forums. Join whatever works for you. There's Facebook groups. There's tons of them. Join a community. Find some buddies, right, that are in your same place, right? Whether you're a tech or you're an exec or your sales or marketing, doesn't matter. Find a group. Go to Growth Generators, MSP Heroes. They have an awesome community too. Tech Degenerates. Plenty of options. Go do it. Any communities that are your favorite, Reg, before we move on to the next thing?
I have invested time in Reddit. A few other things. We tried Discord. It didn't work out great for us. But if I had anything to add to what you just recommended, and I agree with that, I would say also, as you're thinking about where to be seen and listen and learn, I think it's important to, what I find in cybersecurity is that there's a massive echo chamber where a big percentage of the industry have all gotten together and they're just saying the same things over and over. I think anyone who's in cybersecurity and has been here for any length of time knows or probably feels the same way as me. It's like, are we actually doing much better? Like, how much progress have we really made? Are we solving these problems? And I think part of it is because as an industry, we're a bit insular, and we may be talking to our vendors and maybe our supply chain partners. I don't think we're doing a great job communicating with our customers. So that community for me has really become super important. So I would just say, I think it's smart to get involved and, you know, be in situations where you can be vulnerable and people can talk about the strengths and weaknesses of whatever you're doing. But I would argue that can change, and it's real easy to get caught in a loop and just hear the same things over and over and just reinforcing stuff, maybe bad stuff that you're doing because you're not expanding that audience.
It's funny that one of those skill sets you need as you join these communities is less about how to collaborate and more about how to qualify the information you're receiving, right? I would imagine in your world, security alerts are exactly the same thing. It's a lot of noise. And,
Yeah.
to be able to separate the wheat from the chaff, you got to have an idea of what you're looking for. And I would say that's a great way to approach the communities. Know what you're looking for, understand what you get back as a data point. It's not a final determination of what has to be done. And yeah, be cognizant of those echo chambers. That's a big deal of why I like being in part of multiple communities.
Right.
Jay McBain Canales puts out a list every year. He's done so for the last 5 or 10 years, something like that. And I was helping him a year or two ago, and we were up to like 180 communities, and we were still missing some. So it's kind of crazy, but it's good to jump into different ones because our MSP Reddit, you're going to have anonymous opinions. You're going to have opinions of people that may or may not say stuff based on experience. They may be sharing anecdotally. Some other communities like Tech Degenerates has a real names policy. So, if you're talking to a vendor, if you're talking to an MSP, if you're talking to a tech, don't be afraid to ask, what's your experience? What are you basing this off? Most people are open about that. Speaking of your experience, Reg, the next session after that was how to educate and elevate your MSP. Talking about, and that was with Kyle Spooner and Jason Slagle in his Phineas costume. They were talking about how to, we were talking about how our MSP life information is a bit outdated at this point. Security, you can't just say I learned something 10 years ago and I'm good. Most people know I'm a CCIE, but I tell people flat out, I am not the most knowledgeable technical person in my company anymore. I haven't been for a very long time. Recurring education is important, and a methodology for doing that education is important. How have you approached that? How have you approached making sure you're up to speed, or making sure your teams are up to speed on what's going on today?
I think we definitely encourage folks to get a good baseline of education, and we don't care if it's a master's degree. Actually, we do care. We actually prefer certifications to degrees, or even military experience to degrees. That having that basic foundation at least gives you a place to start, but recognize that my certifications, CISSP, CISA, CISM, list goes on. I really don't even invest a lot of time there. I've kind of shifted to a model where part of what we need to do from an education standpoint is self-educate through experimentation, self-assessing, and a lot of it comes down to outcomes. And I'll tell you why we switched, because all that education was great, like ISACA, ISC. They're great organizations, and I think they do a great job of managing certifications, getting people certified, all that process. But we couldn't tie certifications to customer outcomes. And for us, everything is about, are we moving the needle? Can we measure? Can we instrument? And can we show and demonstrate that whatever we're doing, whether it's a risk assessment or running a hamster wheel, like for us, it kind of doesn't matter. And we looked around and we said, well, listen, we're taking all this education and advice from the industry, but I don't see us making much progress. So we started to lean towards more of a balance between industry education, which we're at conferences, we either present or we're there to learn, maintaining certifications, but also critically self-assessing the work that you're doing and asking yourself, is what you did actually working? And what I found is there's a really good, if you can, again, be vulnerable and recognize that what you're doing is not perfect and maybe it never will be, and really measure towards outcomes or tweak your process or the way you're instrumenting the business or the practice. against outcomes, you get a nice blend of that. I think the bonus is you may accidentally invent something new that works even better than what the industry is preaching right now. And in cybersecurity, let's face it, I mean, this industry is fetal. It is brand new. Like we have
Hmm.
no, I mean, people that are out there preaching that they've got the solution, they've got the answer, they've got this. It's like, well, then you clearly don't understand the problem,
Yeah.
because a lot of us are just making this up as we go. Some of it works.
No, we're not, Reg. Come on. We get on panels and we talk and we present. We know exactly what we're talking about,
Yeah.
right?
Um, Sometimes we do. Yeah, I would agree. I think there are lots of smart people trying to solve this, but it's young, it's early, and we don't have a great track record of doing X and getting Y predictably. And so I say, absolutely pursue those certifications. I kind of think, a secondary education institution degree might be partially a waste of your time. But, I think if you can institute a practice of self-assessing and measuring your behavior and activities to outcomes, you can really take a lot of these fundamentals and produce something that really works for your customers and your audiences.
See, I love that because that was actually one of the conversations that Kyle and Jason were having, where Jason made to your point of making sure you have a desired outcome out of this, making sure it's something you're going to value. And so Jason Slagle was talking about how he has his techs do certifications that move their vendor relationships forward. So if there's a certification that has extra subject matter expertise and gets them a better financial tier, better support, whatever it is, that's a primary focus for him. Now, to be fair, Jason also does a lot of education on his own. So he's a proponent for education overall. Whereas Kyle Spooner was making the argument that a lot of certifications teach you how to pass a test or versus
Yeah,
practical knowledge. Um,
right.
Either which way, it doesn't matter why you're doing it. It's a matter of make sure you know what you're trying to get out of it, right? Just like we were talking with community. It doesn't matter what community you go into or how you approach it. Make sure you're looking for some kind of outcome to prove that the time you spent was worthwhile. Um, Reg, you've been doing this a long time. Have you ever in your career gotten extra time where you had nothing to do? I mean, it feels like we're always juggling and trying to, get those minutes back. So we don't have any time to waste.
No, it's hard. I mean, honestly, anything other than stuff that's, you know, categorically customer facing and, revenue generating is difficult to find time for these days. But we're running at top speed, and that's kind of how we like it. We're not a lifestyle business, and but I do think you got to make time, and we do focus on that as we're recruiting and for our employees. It's like, listen, we need you no matter what domain you're in, whether you're in product management, marketing, or business development, or your services and customer facing. Like we need people to be experts and relevant and current, and so that takes time, and it gets harder, I think, all the time to do that because, again, I consider IT and managed services and MSPs to be a completely separate industry from cybersecurity. They do overlap
Oh,
a
for
bit,
sure.
of
Yeah.
course, but I think I'm really speaking to cybersecurity. I think in our industry, I mean, the world has changed so dramatically. Just every year, I feel like I'm saying that. It's just like another order of magnitude. To keep up with stuff is really, you got to be focused because you just
It
can't
really
do
is. Yeah, it really is. You mentioned that you place value on experience and certifications over secondary education. Um, to wrap this up, what are some of the certs you look for um, that you think are, worthwhile?
We don't look for certs as much as we do cert providers. I think
Okay.
there are some higher quality certification developers and providers out there. So we look for those for sure. But I mean, the usual stuff. I do think the CISSP still has legs. I think it's a little diluted and a little overplayed these days, but I think the baseline education that you get from that, I do think is useful. But I love the CISM for my SOCA. So if you're someone who is not just technical facing or doing a lot of the nerdy stuff, but really now you're focused on the why are we doing the nerdy stuff and what happens when we do the nerdy stuff and managing that process. I think it's a nice follow on to folks. And, I never really invested in our team has a bunch of them, but, like the product or service specific stuff like penetration testing and things like that. I think some of those can be useful, but I think it's like anything else. Anytime I go to a conference, I'm sitting in a presentation, probably 90% of what I hear is not true for me. I think you kind of alluded to this earlier, which is, and my therapist says, hey, listen, you got to listen actively, but there's got to be a little bit of a truth evaluation here. So for me, I sit in a presentation, hopefully it's entertaining. 10% of what I hear is going to be something that I was like, oh, yeah, that's a great idea. And I think that fits and aligns well with my belief system, my behaviors, my goals. And the other 90% of it, you jettison. Um, and I think that's true of most certifications too, which is what's my
I agree.
function? What goals and objectives am I after? And, because it's real easy to get a great instructor or a terrible instructor as well. So I think you gotta figure out like what's true for you and what does that process look like? Because if you just try to absorb every single thing you heard, it would just become mud instantly.
It's I agree wholeheartedly. To that age old argument, are certs worth it? My 2 cents is not very different from what we talked about community. It's knowing what's available, getting the data points. Yes, it teaches you best practices according to the vendor or whoever's putting it on at the time. Realize just by matter of the way courses are created and put out, it may be outdated by the time you read through it and take the tests. The Cisco certs, they're every
Yeah.
3 years, 4 years, they're renovated. Um, it's something you just have to be cognizant of. So I do agree with you. Looking for the certification providers are probably better uh, than just the certs themselves. On the IT, on the MSP side, I'm a big fan of CompTIA certs, A plus, Net plus. They're revamping all of those, but Security plus, not because it's going to make you the best engineer on the planet, but because you're going to have a baseline, a foundational knowledge of what's coming up, so that you can have a shared conversation with others that you're going to work with, right? Whether it's another MSP, whether it's your outside security company, whether it's your software, your security awareness vendor, you need to have some kind of shared conversation. So having that basal knowledge that you share is going to be helpful. I see Eric's asking, is it realistic to keep up, or is it about delegating, staying up all in the generalization, staying in tune to the next thing is what I meant to say. Reg, you're in a fast moving field. Is keeping up even realistic, or how do you approach that?
I do think keeping up is achievable, but I think a lot of that will depend on the focus of your business. And so a little bit of a soapbox here. Obviously, we hope we are very plugged into the MSP industry and a lot of the pressure that small MSPs are in to add cybersecurity and now AI to their stacks, so to speak. And I think keeping up gets much harder if you try to be all things to all people. Our business, we only do one thing. And so it's predictable, it's repeatable, there's a process. And I think for us, it's a little bit easier. I mean, I think we're tackling a problem that some people may think doesn't exist yet because small businesses really, in a meaningful way, haven't all said, hey, listen, we're all going to do cybersecurity, right? So there's 33 million of them in this country. And I would argue, I don't know, maybe 500,000 of them are actively pursuing cybersecurity in a meaningful way. So I think we're solving a weird problem right now. We're probably a little bit early. I do think it's possible to keep up, but I think a lot of that will depend on the focus of the business that you operate in. And if I could add one more thing to your recommendation to you consider certs as a source, I think one of the other benefits of pursuing those is staying in the act of learning. I think it's very easy to get so busy that you're just executing and you're just working off of knowledge that you have, and it's part of your brain, and if you got to exercise it. So learning is a critical skill for us, and I think certainly for MSPs these days. So I think just knowing how to learn is one of the additional benefits of going after a certification, regardless of which certification it is. You're on mute.
Muted at least one.
I've been dying to say that. It's not a meeting or a webcast.
Right? Yeah. That's been the mantra since 2020. Am I muted? So, learning how to learn is such a big deal. That's one of those things. It comes from practice, right? It comes from anything you do. And again, you see these themes keep coming back to have an agenda, have some goals before you get into anything. Understand what you're going to get out of that. Let's see here. So the next session was a cool one. It was Wayne Hunter of Avtech Solutions, Peter Melby at New Charter, and screen Crowdcast keeps erasing my text. And Bill Campbell. We're talking about how to develop winning strategies. You've been through several iterations of your career. The definition of winning has changed, I would imagine, depending on where you were in your career at each time. Are there any shared ideas that kind of carried through your career as far as how to win or how to even understand what winning means, right? Because sometimes people don't even know what that is. They're just, it happens and yay, we're winning because the check cleared. How do you identify what your goals were and what strategies did you employ to get there?
Wow, I wasn't expecting a philosophical drop like that. Yeah, I mean, I think I wish I knew 25 years ago that my definition of success in winning was absolutely going to change. So that it gave me a little more permission to evolve. Earlier in my career, hard work, obviously, how much was I making? How quickly was my company growing? That kind of the usual stuff. Those were the metrics. Middle of my career started to migrate a little bit more to, are we doing good things for good people? And now winning for me is, can I have a career that I enjoy and still be the kind of dad that my daughter wants to hang around with, wants to spend time with? Like, it's completely shifted. And if I knew that I was going to go through such a transition like that, I think the changes would have been a little more easy to swallow. But winning, I think, is different for everyone.
Pivoting isn't easy, right? And that's where that echo chamber you were talking about at the beginning is so dangerous, because sometimes you don't realize you need to pivot, right? Sometimes you don't realize this is something, yes, we think we were doing it to great success for ourselves, but you start talking to other people and going outside your regular circles and realize, no, we could do a whole lot better. Or maybe we were screwing up, which it happens. Eating crow is something that every business owner has to get used to at some point or another. For me, identifying what I want to win has always been, I've talked about this a million times, developing your business plan. Even if you're not an owner, develop your career plan. There's no reason, whether you're in sales, admin, HR, finance, tech, whatever you're doing, you don't have those. You should have those 5 or 10-year goals. You should have those things that say, I want to get here, and then start mapping backwards. How do I get there? Winning strategies in the case of an MSP owner, right? Trying to generate new business. Kyle Christensen's session just before ours was talking about how to figure out what revenue goals you have and how to work backwards there, all the way to how many leads do I need per month and how is that going to get me there? Defining those goals to me has always been the hardest thing in the world. Not because I don't know what I want to do, but it's limiting. I want to do all these things. These are the 1 or 2 things I need to hyper focus on. These are the chief goals for the company. When you've had to, I imagine you've been in similar places, right? You have, as a business owner, you have lots of opportunities. How do you identify the ones that are the most important to you or for your companies?
Yeah, that's good. I don't know if I have a good system. I would argue that the results speak for themselves in some way, but I don't know if I'm good at that at all. The prioritization. There's some instinct now, having been through a couple of companies and exits, that I think I can look back and say this led to success, or but I don't know if I'm necessarily good at it. So I'm not going to give any advice on setting priorities. I think my priorities just happened to me, and they were presented, and to no credit of mine or nothing I did, they just became part of my soul and my vision, and what made me feel good. So in some ways, a selfish pursuit to the things that were important to me became my priorities, but I don't think I did anything to really actively or effectively manage those. But what I will say is, and because you made a good point earlier, I think, and I'm guilty of this for sure. So I grew up in a musical family, and I've been a musician my whole life. And so a lot of my wisdom comes from musicians. And I just listened to this interview with Keith Urban, and he said something that was really, it was moving for me. He was talking about his struggle through his early years, and he worked hard, and he's outworked everyone in the room. And he got to a point, where he was an international superstar, and he was sitting outside with his wife, just him and his wife, out by the fire pit, just doing nothing. His wife looked at him and said, this is it. There's nothing we can do to make life any better than this. We're happy, we're healthy, whatever it was for them. And he said it changed his life, that moment, because he had never known arriving. He had only known the struggle. And so for those of us who thrive on the struggle and really don't stop to celebrate those victories and the winning, it can be really frustrating in some ways, because for me, I would you know meet a goal of mine, and then I would move the goalpost. It's like, well, that was great, but I can do more. Like I got the next thing. Or and I think I think we have to be better at arriving. You're on mute again.
Sorry. Being satisfied is not something most business owners are comfortable with. It's not something I've ever been comfortable with. I will say, I see some in the chat, Sheila saying, bravo for that reframe priorities, Reg. I've always said I'll never be on my deathbed wishing I worked more or clean the house more often. It's funny because I was just talking about this to somebody else yesterday. Early days, MSP owner, working 20-hour days. I was still working at the police department, moving off and retiring. And so I was working that, and I was working the company. And then when I moved over full-time to the MSP, same thing, working 20-hour days until my wife, I'm talking to her at 11 o'clock at night one day. I'm at the office. She's at home in bed where she should be. And she tells me, what's the point of doing all this if you're not going to see your family? What's the point of building this for your family if you're not going to spend time with your family? And that was a complete reframe. Whereas now, my focus, my winning is very different. My winning today is do everything to grow the company so it can support the people that run the company and the people that benefit, being our partners, our clients, whatever it is, so that they can enjoy their personal life, right? Enjoying your personal life does require a certain amount of stability, a certain amount of resources. That doesn't mean you need to be a slave to it. One of the talks I gave at MSP Geek, not this past year, but the year before, embrace your passions, but avoid the burnout, right? Identifying what are the signs of burnout? What are the red flags of impending burnout? Because it's so easy to get caught up in, especially when we're moving those goalposts, where today, when I define goals, and this will be your action item, people, when I define goals, I give them timelines, whether, I'm trying to achieve this by this date. If I haven't achieved it, I'm either going to determine if I need to cut bait or if I need to spend more time in it. But if I'm spending more time, I'm not adding another objective. have a limit to what you can do. Um, Similarly, I'd say go define what your winning is, including your personal life. Don't just let it be business. I often tell people when I
Yeah.
interview them, business is in service of your personal life, not the other way around. The only one that signs up for blood, sweat, and tears is us, right? The business owners. And even I, I'm not, business is not my entire life. I have no intention of making it that way. So I appreciate when people see that as well. Connor, I just signed up for the tier. I signed up just for the tiers. Oh, um, let's see. Sheila says it's like having a dinner party. What time do you want to serve dinner? Work backwards from there. Buy these ingredients. Start the dish at X time. Absolutely. That's exactly what Kyle Christensen was talking about. Same with MSPs. What do we want to accomplish? Work backwards from there. Concrete steps, measurable steps. If you're not familiar with the goal, with SMART goals, sounds like Sheila absolutely is, but SMART goals determining, I'll put the link in the chat, but SMART goals give you actionable items that are digestible and can be broken down. Similar, we do OKRs, objectives and key results, and we break them down into 12-week segments, X amount of time per week, depending on what the goal is. But there needs to be a start and a finish. Absolutely. Let's move on to something I think you and I both enjoy. Mastering sales, in this case, mastering MSP sales. But Reg, I've seen you. You're pretty damn good at selling. What's worked for you? What have you developed any process around the selling or anything like that?
So to answer your question directly, yes, we have a well documented, defined, repeatable process for business development. What I'll tell you is the best salespeople I've ever met don't sell. They help people buy. And I think some of the things that we really as a company institute as a core value have also helped us reach our audience, who arguably are very difficult to find. And there aren't a lot of them out there in terms of percentages. So finding a 50-person manufacturer who is just dying to start their CMMC journey, like they're just not out there.
They're all out there, right? There's conventions of these people. There's
So another huge mistake we made. So at my prior company, we built a national sales force. We were selling cybersecurity to Fortune 10,000, and we were shooting fish in a barrel. Like it was this the time, and we were just taking orders. When 5 years ago, starting Orbital Fire, because again, I was naive and open to making big mistakes, we tried that same thing, and it failed miserably because we weren't just looking for a needle in a haystack. There were thousands of haystacks. Because out of those 33 million small businesses 5 years ago, I mean, 1% of 1% of 1% were our target, right? Someone who's ready to buy cybersecurity. And we were really forced to rethink everything that we had done in business development. And I was personally starting from scratch. It's just like, I don't know where to find them. I don't know how to talk to them. I don't know what moves them, what motivates them. So we spent a long time really digging into that. And I think now we understand that there's really only 5 things. There's only 5 reasons that small businesses do cybersecurity. And we really focus on translating our nerd speak and what we do into business language. And so when we talk about cybersecurity, we talk about competitive advantage. We talk about cost savings. We talk about minimizing disruptions. We talk about enhancing your reputation. We talk about things that they all understand, because they don't care about hashed passwords. They don't care about an incident response plan. They do not care about conditional access. They just don't, because they don't understand it enough to care about it. Just like if I were to ask an MSP how well they appreciate GAAP accounting principles, they'd be like, I don't know what that is. I don't care about it. So it's natural, but I think being effective in business development means you know how to move to your audience. So 1, do you have a solution for a problem that they see as important? 2, can you talk about the solution in a way that they understand? But 3, And this always riles me up because my industry is full of purists who pound their fists and mandate and say, you must do this, you must do that. And that's not how cybersecurity is supposed to work. This is about managing risk and helping your customer make informed decisions. We are the Secret Service. Like, so if it was up to us, the president would never leave the Oval Office. I get it. However, dropping into a combat zone on Christmas Eve, that's going to happen. Even though you do not want your customer doing that, that's going to happen. Your job is not to prevent them from doing that, but rather to say, okay, here's the alternatives. And if you decide that you're still going to drop into a combat zone on Christmas Eve, here's our recommendation on managing that risk to an acceptable level as you've defined it, Mr. and Mrs. Customer. Our
That's
industry is just overwhelmed with nerds who have never run a business, who've never had to make payroll, who've never had to make hard business decisions. And here they are telling these business owners what they must do. And it's just nonsense.
it's funny because that's something you learn as you grow, right? I often talk about techs have a they grow up like children, truthfully. In the beginning, they're in awe of everything early in their career. They want to soak up as much as possible. They understand they don't know anything. They just want to learn from everybody around them. Super big passion. They get into their teenage years. They think they know enough. They do know enough just to be a little damaging if they make a mistake, but they don't know their own limitations. They haven't learned oops, I'm now in charge of my own decisions. And if I screw up, I really screw up. And then you get a little more tenured, later in life, and you just realize, I don't know jack shit. I know what I've learned. I love my experiences. I know how to apply them. But every situation, you walk in more of an open mind of, I'm going to have my opinions, but they are going to be malleable. What I'm going to do is not going to be fixed, set in stone. You're right. The tech community sometimes people get very passionate about how they think something should be run. I've been subject to that too. Lord knows I've gotten passionate about stuff and later had to think maybe, being a little more flexible would have been smarter play. And definitely makes it easy in sales and working with colleagues and working with the public. Just be open to saying, I don't know. That's a fine thing to do. I'm good with that.
Amazing. Three amazing words that will build trust instantly. A customer asks you or a prospect, whoever you're talking to, is, listen, I'm not the expert and I want to make sure you have good information. Let me go get you the right answer on that and I'll do it immediately. Like that is so much better than just blurting out, whatever your religious, obsession is. Because the customer doesn't care. Again, I think I see MSPs act the same way as cybersecurity nerds, which is whatever they have figured out, whatever they're an expert in, that's what the customer should be doing. And they're going to beat on the customer until they come around. But the customer doesn't come around.
No.
The customer has a business to run. And they don't care about your nerdy stuff, your flux capacitors. And so again, for us, the more we can retract from traditional sales tactics, the better. And it almost gives us hives when we're like competing with someone who's, and we were 2 weeks ago, probably 3 weeks ago, we had a very good customer who said, hey, listen, so-and-so came in and said they can do all this stuff. And, they were scaring us and they told us all these, fanciful, things that they could do. And they were really questioning whether or not that was a better solution than what we were doing. We said, we'll compete with anybody. Well, we're going to tell you the truth about what we can do, what we can't do. Eventually, and I think they're now coming back towards us and, and we'll see. I mean, sometimes those scare tactics do work, But what I'd argue is that when people are scared, they make faster decisions, but they don't make better decisions. So sorry for interrupting.
No, I agree with you 100%. I love Goldie's comment. I love smart goal setting. A wise human once said, make your goals smarty with an I at the end. Smart is defined by all the literature out there. Don't forget to make your goals I for inspiring you, but also others internally and externally. There's a lot to that I. And actually, I think that goes hand in hand with what you're saying of, you want to make sure the other side is heard, you're addressing their concerns, their pain points. And if you're really damn good, you can get them inspired to want to work with you. And that's a constant challenge. If you're account management, if you're any kind of technical account manager, anybody going in front of people, getting them to be inspired to have the shared goals that you guys have together. And that's going to require understanding their needs, which every good MSP should do. Get that inspiration going. I think that's a phenomenal takeaway. For those that are in need of a sales process, instead of writing in the chat, go back and see Will Brooks and Alex Farling session. There's a nice screen right there with all the stuff to do. So moving on to social media, using social media to grow your MSP. Gone are the days of just doing pay-per-click or maybe just doing cold calling. Social media has become a bigger and bigger channel for us to grow our businesses. I don't even think I should be up here talking about social media. I think Amanda should be up here because she's a genius when it comes to that. How have you applied social media? How have you seen it applied well when it comes to growing your business?
So, quick disclaimer, the only app that I even use anymore, and I am even starting to separate from that, is LinkedIn, because it's mostly nonsense. I mean, you got to scroll for a long time before you see something useful, relevant, and interesting. So I started giving up social media in the right around 2015. I abandoned Facebook very publicly. And it's just kind of occurred. I think I think there's a way for businesses to use social media effectively, and we do it. I mean, we're out there, obviously.
Yeah.
So we're in the
I
usual
don't think
channels.
You can completely skip it.
No, you can't completely skip it, and I do think that there are ways, and I think our team is effective. Like, what we do is good. For me personally, it's different because I find very little joy in it anymore. It used to be fun. It used to be a place where I could express my own opinions and I would get sincere, authentic reactions. But now you got to scroll through, 18 cat videos and cybersecurity ads before I even see someone that I even know. So I think I'm sort of on the fence with all of this. But to answer your question directly, I think part of this is authenticity. I think you should know what your company's core values are and the brand that you want to build. We are very, very big on branding. In fact, everyone in my company has heard me say 1,000 times that the brand is the boss. Like, we have developed a vision for the company. The brand is the next concentric ring there. And whether it's colors, images, and typefaces, or it's the words we use or don't use, the behaviors, the core values, like, that's our brand. And I think if you are good at extending that, and there's many audiences, but I think if you are good at taking that brand and extending that into social media in a way where you can avoid some of the stigma around a few of these things, then I think you can be good at it. I think it's tough to be good at social media if you don't have a strong brand identity. You know what I mean? And so it's something to extend.
I will say, I think much like HD, 5G, and a lot of other terms, social media, the definition has gotten diluted a fair bit. Truth of the matter is there's so many avenues for social media, whether you're doing it via Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok. Ooh, TikTok. I know we don't like that one. Any of the channels, Twitter, X, whatever they call themselves. Those things, those avenues, those channels are going to have different methods that work in those arenas. And it's a constantly moving target. The one thing I can say that I've seen that is kind of just held true for everybody across platforms is be genuine, be yourself.
Yep.
I will call out Amanda's work, and it's not just Amanda; it's the work at Phin. But their social media is phenomenal because it has a good bit of education, a good bit of creating questions that inspire conversations. Right, getting back to the Smarties, and it has a fair bit of just being a person, being even if it's just Phineas, right? It's their mascot. Right. Just being being a person, hearing people out and realizing you're more than just a business, I think has had, yes, YouTube and Reddit. I should be the first to say YouTube and Reddit, given that I run a network, but those are all very different. And so I invite you guys to go look at Matt Fox and Tom Lawrence, also both excellent at what they do. But my takeaway for this is actually going to go follow some people that are inspiring in this, because they not only do what they do, but they teach others. I'm putting Amanda's LinkedIn. Sorry, Amanda, I know you didn't ask, but that's what I'm doing. And then my own Alexandria Boyd, because she's done several talks on being your authentic self in sales. And I think that goes back to, people know when they're being sold to like a commodity, right? You don't want to be the checkout line. You want to be a personal conversation. You want to know that you understand each other, and that requires being a human. Any final words on that before we move on to the next one?
No, I think back to Phin, I think they have really figured branding out, even as a young company. So whether it's the visual elements or the personality, stitching the personality of the company into all of their messaging and the events they go to and the costumes they wear, whatever it is, like they've done a good job developing a cohesive brand. And I'm sure Amanda would probably say, my job's a piece of cake, because we've built a brand that is extensible and it plays well in social media channels.
I see Sheila writes, I'm burned out on hustle, look at me culture, and the fire hose of information. So I only use LinkedIn and Nextdoor at home, and both only occasionally. Many of our clients' leads don't even use LinkedIn anymore, and we gave up on Facebook years ago. That's something we should probably mention. One of the things that worked well for me in the MSP days, and then moving on to the VoIP days and all the other stuff I do, is not trying to bring people to me, but going where they are. And understanding that in my MSP days, if I was focusing on legal, I would find ways to be the speakers in their continuing education courses, whether it was security or operations or whatever, tech, whatever it happened to be. I'd go find them, right? Peer groups, business groups like BNI and stuff. They all have varying degrees of success. But the point is, if you know who you're looking for, if you're creating those end goals and you identify who's going to get you there, go find them. Because otherwise, I bet, Reg, if you get on Facebook now and you start trying to do a social media strategy on Facebook for your business, it's not going to work, because that's not your thing. That's not where you want to be, right? It would be authentic, disauthentic,
Authentic, authentic. So yeah, I completely agree. So our prospects and customers get their cybersecurity information from the Today Show. So for us, we are re-looking at things like Facebook, which we've never done, because our social media efforts are always, as you say, go to where your prospects and customers are. Where are they getting their information? It doesn't matter where it is. It could be a local chamber, or it could be, CBS Morning News. Like, you got to figure out how to be in front of them if you're going to use social media effectively for customers. Now, there's also other audiences like potential employees, your partners. And so for each one of these audiences, you got to figure out, where do they get information and how can I effectively be in front of them in a social way? But yeah, it's got to be authentic.
Oh, 100%. Now I'm looking at the MSP Power Hour yesterday. Don Sizer, Henry Tim, Bob Coppage. And one of the comments Don said was, tell me about your business model, your strategy, and your plan. Going back to what you were saying, asking the other party about, tell me what's important to you. It's easy to just flat out ask those questions. It'll work for you as an MSP. All right, let's see. What to do today to win as an MSP? That was the one right before us. That was Kyle Christensen talking about, effective strategies to actually win as an MSP. I love Kyle because he's a data-driven guy. He's not one of those that just says, totally, go do this, right? He's telling you, like, these numbers working backwards. And we started this conversation with exactly that. I apologize, Reg, I just saw the time. Do you need to drop? Because I know you have a presentation.
3 minutes, I think. Yes.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm running to a conference presentation right now.
All right. And for those that don't know, Reg, constantly speaking, constantly presenting, took time out while he's somewhere to be speaking to do this. So thank you so much, dude. I appreciate it.
My honor. It's my honor. Thank you.
So Kyle Christensen, Empath, he's giving out strategies. He, in the previous session, he was talking about, actual methodology. Here's your sales plan, from lead to close deal. What to do to win an MSP is he's talking about how to work backwards, how to work from that final sales goal backwards over to the lead, because I think MSPs understand most parts of a sales lifecycle in terms of, once we sign, it takes this long to onboard, this long to get them, kind of even keel, right? Because there's always that 6-month period or a year, depending on how bad their infrastructure was. But I don't think any MSPs really understand, very few MSPs actually understand client acquisition costs. In your businesses, I know that's been like a key point. It is for us. It has to, determining where the money comes from and how much we spend to get that new money. Are there any insights you could tell us about how you've looked at client acquisition costs, or things that were more important to you than not?
I think when you're going into a business where you don't have all the answers, and that's probably most of the time, you need to, as you're building the different layers of your business, instrument every single thing. Everything should have a gauge. Everything should have a data output, because you're going to make mistakes, or you're going to find opportunities to do things differently and better. But there's no way to change the business if you don't have those dials and levers integrated into the business. So my recommendation is, don't worry so much about which metrics to collect. I say instrument the entire business, and eventually you'll figure out which ones are the most important. The dashboard, the monthly dashboard, you'll figure that out eventually. But by doing that, it gives you the ability to tweak something here to see how it affects the rest of the business over here. So whether that's changing your pricing, does that truly change demand and customer conversion or prospect conversion? Does what would be another one? What you pay, your average salary, your average comp, does that change the quality of the people, or the throughput, productivity, and outcomes of your service? If you have instrumented that all of those elements, it gives you a really powerful set of things to assess and adjust from. I'm going to say it again, Ray.
Those intangibles are so.
Thank you for giving that opportunity again, right before I drop.
Yeah, there you go. No, I agree with you. And those intangibles are so hard to account for. That just takes lifelong learning, in my opinion, just constant reevaluation. Reg, I'll let you drop off. I appreciate you so much, dude. Thank you.
Likewise, man. It's good to see you. Good to hang.
Same here. Take care. For the what to do to win as an MSP, the takeaway I'll give you is Kyle gave a sales activity planner. Kyle gave how to determine, how to calculate your compound annual growth rate. And if you've never heard the acronym CAGR or CAC, go watch the session, please. There's some business knowledge there that, even if you're not a business person at your MSP, you could definitely learn from. So with that said, I think we're at the top of the hour. I think we, Amanda, let me know if I need to shut up. But I want to say thank you to everybody that joined, and Goldie, Sheila, everybody in the comments. Thanks for sharing. And Connor, I'm sorry for all the tears, dude. I apologize. So actually, that's not true. I'm gonna still give Connor tears. So yeah, if anybody has any questions or anything, let me know in the chat. But thanks for joining, and I hope you enjoy